The Pittsburgh Steelers took down the Cleveland Browns in very expected fashion as they returned from their bye week in week 6. It was a continuation of the yearly tradition that is the Pittsburgh Steelers abusing and dominating the Cleveland Browns at home following a 23-9 victory. That victory propelled the Steelers to a 4-1 record. It propelled them to an expanded lead in the AFC North, a division that they have completely taken control of through the early portion of the 2025 season. And it also has the entire league, all Steelers talk, the NFL buzzing around the legitimacy of the Pittsburgh Steelers and if they are actually Super Bowl contenders this year with Aaron Rodgers and company. Now, if you ask me, are they unquestioned Super Bowl contenders as week 7 kicks off? Not necessarily. If you've heard or read anything that I've said or written about the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, you're not surprised by that answer by me. Some call it skepticism, some might call it pessimism. I like to refer to it as like a healthy dose of realism, a cautious dose of realism. It's just still too early for me to make that definitive statement about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are impressive. They are improving. They have a great shot to do something special here in 2025. I am certainly ready to say that, but I cannot definitively make the statement that they are Super Bowl contenders unquestionably. There's still so much regular season football left to play. What I do know for sure, what I feel even more confident in stating here is that this Pittsburgh Steelers team, that as they collect victories, has a defensive group that is menacing, and when they play up to their standards and up to their expectations, this group certainly meets the expectations that safety Juan Thornhill laid out in training camp at St. Vincent's whenever he said that this could be a historic group. And as the season began, he received a bit of flack for making that statement, but as he reaffirmed to reporters post game after their week 6 victory, he certainly still believes that this group can be historic. And I'm kind of coming around to the idea, and I think we all should be too. And when I think about those historic defenses, both within the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, the early 2000s and 2010s defensive teams under Dick LeBeau that led to championships, the 1970s Steel Curtains. I think of other examples around the NFL, like the 1986 Giants or the 85 Chicago Bears. I think of some more recent examples, like the Ray Lewis and Ed Reed led Baltimore Ravens, the division rival of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think of the Seattle Seahawks and their legendary secondary, led by Richard Sherman whenever they won their Super Bowl in 2013. I think of the Denver Broncos no-fly zone and how they led Peyton Manning and his duck wing arm to a Super Bowl whenever he could barely still throw. And I think of all of these defenses, and we think of the lore of great historic NFL defenses. Yes, they had complementary football. Yes, they had underrated aspects that we love to dig into and talk about as football nerds, but when we look at it, whenever we talk about it, when we're chatting about those legendary defenses, there's always that first thing we bring up, and that's always that one thing that separated them both from their competition at the time and what separates them and makes them so legendary now as we continue to recall these units. And when I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers defense in 2025, I see that similarity emerging. It's not 100%, but it's there. And yes, they have complementary football. Yes, they have equal parts star power at different position groups across the defense, and they have underrated aspects of it as well. But there is one defining piece that whenever we do talk about this team in the future, if they have accomplished anything, the conversation will have started with one thing, 3 names, but one thing: TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig. I hope everybody in Steelers Nation is still riding high after that win over the Cleveland Browns. I'm Jacob Puntori. We're back with another episode of Puntori's Playbook, where I dive into my biggest questions surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers and try to find answers, or at least at the very least, maybe find out some more information. And so the Pittsburgh Steelers have this chance to do something special. I agree with Juan Thornhill, and it's because they have an edge rushing trio that is not only elite, but has the chance to lead them to historic places, not just now, but in the entire pantheon of the Pittsburgh Steelers organization and the NFL. TJ Watt is an otherworldly player. He is the $41 million man. He remains an incredible factor. And despite the numbers from TJ Watt not popping off the page like they might have in years before, he is affecting every single snap. He has 24 tackles through 5 games. He has 3.5 sacks. He has a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, an interception, and his run stopping prowess continues to be something that opposing offenses game plan around. Teams do not even want to run to his side of the football field because he is just that dominant at setting the edge. And then you look over at the other side, it doesn't make you feel any better because you have this breakout star in the 23-year-old Nick Herbig. He's in his third, fourth year in the NFL, and he comes off of a 5.5 sack season last year, limited a bit by injuries, misses game one of the 2025 regular season, and then catches absolute fire. He was phenomenal against the Cleveland Browns. And I imagine that Dylan Gabriel, the rookie quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, was having flashbacks to his own high school state championship back in the state of Hawaii in 2018, when none other than, of course, Nick Herbig took him down 4 times as Nick Herbig and his high school classmates won the state title in the state of Hawaii in 2018. Flash forward 7 years later, and Nick Herbig is once again instilling nightmares into Dylan Gabriel because that man can do it all. The Pittsburgh Steelers not only have TJ Watt, not only have Nick Herbig, who is finding his game and finding a new level. We saw the return of Alex Highsmith, and now the trio was complete. And there was a time where people, it wasn't me, wasn't Noah Strackbiden, it was not anyone from the All Steelers Talk podcast, not at all. Absolutely not us. Don't go back and look and see or prove me wrong or anything like that. But there were some crazy folks saying that maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers should deal Alex Highsmith and maybe they should see what they can get for the star edge rusher, the former Pro Bowl edge rusher. What a dumb thought that was, right? And I'm so glad that All Steelers Talk definitely never had that suggestion or even pondered that idea at all, because his return against the Cleveland Browns proved that he was indispensable. And it also proved that this trio is the way forward and the only way that they are going to find true success in the postseason. Because look, here's what needs to happen moving forward. The Pittsburgh Steelers started to build the blueprint of how they are going to utilize and find ways to keep all 3 players on the field. Against the Cleveland Browns, they did an excellent job of evenly distributing the snap counts. Nick Herbig led the way defensively with 50 defensive snaps. TJ Watt had 49 and Alex Highsmith had 47. That is almost perfect even splits there. Now, will that continue moving forward? I'm not 100% sure. I think the game plan going against each team should dictate that. Going against the Cleveland Browns, they knew that they had a short window of rest before they meet the Cincinnati Bengals here in week 7. It obviously played a factor in making sure that they reduced TJ Watt's usage. It obviously was a factor that Alex Highsmith is in his first game back from injury. They wanted to make sure the wear and tear on him was not too much. Nick Herbig is playing at the best he's ever played at this level in the NFL, so you have to continue to find ways to get him onto the field. That all makes sense. But what is going to be the biggest challenge here is how do they continue to find that even split?
What's up, AST Nation? I've teamed up with DraftKings. The next great touchdown is coming. You can bet on it. And the best way to do so is through DraftKings Sportsbook, where new customers who bet $5 get $300 in bonus bets plus 3 months of NBA League Pass if your bet wins. That means new customers turn $5 into $300 if your bet wins in bonus bets. The crown is yours. Love the thrill of live betting? DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in-progress games right as they happen. Then use your bonus bets to stay in on the action and bet DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. And don't worry, if sports betting is not yet available in your state, you're fine. You can still join in on all of the fun with DraftKings daily fantasy sports and have the shot to win cash prizes. New customers who bet $5 get $300 in bonus bets and 3 months of NBA League Pass if your bet wins. Sign up using my promo code ALLSteelers and get in on the action. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook.
But is it a challenge? No, what I would argue here is that this is the fun part. This is what head coach Mike Tomlin, defensive coordinator Terrell Austin, these are the problems they dream of figuring out. We're not no longer in the territory of how do we figure out how to field 11 starter level defenders for Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin like we had been in years past. No, 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 no. Now we are in the situation of how do we make sure these three edge rushers, who are not only starters but star level edge rushers on all 32 NFL teams, have enough reps, are able to get enough action on the field in order to affect the game at the level that they all three of them are capable of. And I think the fun part about this is they can just keep all three heavily involved and they can be creative in how that plays out. There were a couple of plays I loved against the Cleveland Browns where there were times where the defensive lineman dropped back into coverage as a disguise in order to facilitate some blitzing disguises happening. There were times where all three of those defenders were on the field and they had them spread out and they allowed Alex Highsmith to occupy an edge. They allowed TJ Watt to occupy his normal spot on the opposite edge. And you have Nick Herbig lining up in a sort of middle linebacker sort of position, dime linebacker position, and able to just blitz in between the A or B gap here. And he's so athletic and so quick and so explosive that he's able to make the center or guard, whoever he's going up against, miss. And he was constantly disrupting Dylan Gabriel's progressions because of it. And as the continued attention on TJ Watt, as the continued attention on a returning Alex Highsmith continues to build, who is going to benefit the most from that? Of course, it's Nick Herbig. And as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin continues to find ways to get all three on the field, and that's going to have to change. It's going to have to adjust. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think if they put their trust in this trio, if they depend on this trio, and I think if they build on it and just allow them to lead them, this Pittsburgh Steelers team is going to figure out just how far they actually can go. And I think that means a very strong winning season. I think that means possibly a division title. And I think if they play their cards right, it means they could probably go even further and finally vanquish some of these playoff demons that have occupied this team for nearly a decade. It's not a fully solved equation. The puzzle is very much still being put together, but what the Steelers have right now is a trio that can be the basis of a historical elite defense that leads this team to new heights and also is the starting point of when we look back and talk about those historic defenses and we mentioned that 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers won. That's going to do it for me in Puntori's playbook for this edition. We'll be back right after the Cincinnati Bengals take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 7 here. And in the meantime, we'll be back a little bit later today with the flagship program here on All Steelers Talk. So you can catch Noah and I on that a little bit later. And then we'll be back after that. You can subscribe to everything we do here on YouTube at youtube.com/allsteelerstalk. You can find our stuff anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can read our work and find everything else at si.com/NFL/Steelers. And until I see y'all next time, be good to each other, Yinzer Nation. Be kind to each other, Steelers Nation. And I'll see y'all soon. Peace.